To address the elephant in the room, yes, I acknowledge the coincidence between this supernatural experience and the fact that the mascot for Snapchat is a little cute ghost. Setting the scene, this experience took place in my father's home, back when I was a college senior, catching up on my assignments. The house was somewhat new to our family, having owned it for about 4 years at this point. It used to belong to a local celebrity and was a somewhat recent build, having been erected in the 80s at some point. To our knowledge, no one had ever died in the house. The other new thing to my family about this home was the lack of streetlights on the streets, leading the house to be very dark if no lights were on. The time this story happened was at times such as this, around 8 p.m. The room was illuminated by my large-sized desktop monitor. I was stuck using my old desktop, originally donated to my dad, because my laptop will keep getting the blue screen of death. I was Snapchatting back and forth with a friend of mine in this room, taking selfies and writing text on each snap, when she responded to one of my pictures. "Is that your dad?" Confusion ensues. "What?" I responded. "The man that was walking in the room. Was that your dad?" Considering no one else was home, I proceeded to shit bricks. "There's no one else here. You're seeing shit." "No, I swear to God, I saw someone in the room." She doubled down, not giving me even a false sense of relief. What did they even look like? They looked tall and old, and with glasses. Why did I have to be a fucking detective? My dad is fucking 5'4" and doesn't even wear glasses. What the fuck did you even see? The rest of the conversation was hard to remember past this point. Doubling down from her, a waffling back and forth between curiosity, terror, and doubt in her snap testimony from me, and a strong lack of comfort on either side of the screen. While I haven't spoken to her in a very long time, she always maintained that she saw someone behind me that day. And behind me in one of my many goofy selfies was an old man who was tall and who wore glasses. I had a couple other experiences in this house that made me wonder if there really was something in that room that day, one of which could have probably been a post on its own. The house is beautiful and very old. I personally practice witchcraft and am very confident in my own intuition. The friends I went to see it with, not so much. The entire first floor, the largest floor, felt wonderful. Bright, sunny energy. I could just picture sitting in a sundress and drinking lemonade. Beautiful and sunny, bright, positive energy. As soon as we went up the stairs, it got a little muddied. The energy wasn't bad, just kind of stagnant and hard to read. And then we realised it had a third floor. None of us knew it had a third floor. Attic? We couldn't see any windows to it outside. And we've all been to it a few times, so that was odd in of itself. It also had a lot of rat feces all over the staircase, so my feelings may have been a bit biased already. But I took one step towards the first step and got a horrible gut feeling to just run. It was pitch black at the top of the stairs, even with my flashlight, and I just got the nastiest feeling. Super, super negative and intense energy, just radiating from the top of the stairs. My friend laughed at me and said I was being a scaredy cat and told me to give me my phone and he'd go up and take a video for me. He took one step towards it and apparently felt the same way and just turned around and jogged straight to the first floor and out the front door. My third friend wouldn't even go to the second floor. I hadn't told them how intense the feeling was, just that I don't want to go up there. My question here, that was an intense feeling, and I'm not confident I'd be able to cleanse it. This feels like the start of a horror movie. Buy abandoned house in the middle of nowhere, fix it up, get murdered by attic demon. I literally cannot stop thinking about how pitch black it looked at the top of the stairs. I was tossing and turning all night. My grandfather passed away 3 weeks ago in his house from a possible heart attack. My mum and I arrived the day after he died. We noticed that the smoke alarm was beeping, so we thought nothing of it and just said that we would wait until my dad got here to fix it. A few days passed and we completely forgot about the smoke alarm beeping, until the next night my mum asks me if I remember the smoke alarm going off. And I said yes. Then she tells me that the smoke alarm is hanging down from the ceiling and that the battery slot is open. I found that very creepy and strange. Now, the smoke alarm is 12 feet from the ground. Nobody was in the house for the past few days, so no one was able to get a ladder and do that to the smoke alarm. My grandfather doesn't even have a ladder that goes that high. So that was really strange. A couple of weeks have passed and the smoke alarm hasn't gone off since. Not until 2 nights ago. I heard it beeping again. It beeped for around 30 minutes until it stopped. I told my dad that it went off again and he put a new battery in it, but I believe my grandfather was visiting again and made it start beeping. I want to mention too, when my mum and I first got here, she said that the house smells like cigarette smoke. She asked if I could smell it too, but I didn't. Only she did. She then told me later that he smoked a lot when she was growing up. That's all that's happened since I've been here in this house. I'll update if anything paranormal happens. Between the ages of 2 and 5, I had an imaginary friend named Charlie. He was tall and thin, with grey hair and brown eyes, probably around 50 or 60 years old. The first warning sign was his age, as most imaginary friends are the same age as the child. He was kind though. We played together a lot. Dolls, swing sets, toys. My grandma caught me talking to him once and asked who I was talking to. I told her I was talking to Charlie. She asked about him, so I explained it to her. What he looked like, how he acted, what we did, etc. My grandpa walked in and our conversation was interested, and got more and more surprised as I went on. He went on to tell me this. A man named Charlie lived in the house next to ours in the 50s, when he was growing up. Pa said he didn't remember a lot about him, just that he was really tall and had an old car that left a big trail of black smoke behind it. The house Charlie supposedly lived in was just a stone porch now, as the rest of it had burned down decades ago. Charlie had a wife, Eliza. She died a few years after they got married. She committed suicide, slit her throat and bled to death. His next wife, Rose, lived in another city and refused to move down to Charlie's house until he built her a porch. So he did, and they married and she moved in. She died about 9 or 10 years later. She was getting ready for bed when her nightgown caught on fire from the fireplace in their room. She burned to death and took the house with her. Everything except the porch, which didn't even have a burn mark. The wooden door leading to the porch was completely fine too. It's still there, and I go see it every time I visit my grandparents. Anyway, Charlie died in the 1960s from heart failure. He lived with his sister until he passed away. I suppose he came back to see how everything was doing and decided to stay. I've never ever told this story to anyone, but I've kept it in my mind since it happened in 1998. I just want to preface by saying I've never held a belief in ghosts, the afterlife, anything of the sort, either past or present. Even this event is not enough to make me believe ghosts are real. However, I do not have any material explanation for the event. It was mid-August 1998. I was 22 years old and working a summer job at a gas station before heading back to school. On a nice summer night, cars would come and go. As we had a full service pump, I'd walk out of my little storefront for every car and pump their gas. The weather was perfect, not too hot when normally it would be blisteringly hot at that time of year. Around the side of the building were the entrances to the bathrooms. I headed that way to use the restroom when I saw two hippie-looking teens with a dog, a boy and a girl. I grew up listening to bands like the Grateful Dead and Fish, still do. And while I don't present as a hippie, I feel very comfortable in these circles. I could tell these kids had probably been hitchhiking. They didn't look destitute, but they were dirty and probably a bit hungry. Even though I was probably no more than 5 years older than them, I felt bad and wanted to help. I put a few bucks in the vending machine, bought them some snacks and drinks, and gave the dog a bowl of water. They were very thankful, and the doggo was very friendly. We chatted for a minute, and then the boy said, The dog's not ours. He was just hanging out here. He was friendly, so we just started playing and patting him. That was strange, of course, but not too crazy, right? Dogs get lost all the time. He was friendly and didn't look mistreated, so I just assumed he'd gotten lost. Oh, and he had a collar and tag. Cool, I can find his owner. Oh, and his name. Sam. Important to note that he would respond to me calling his name. Sam. A car pulled up to the full service pump, so I ran out and did my thing. Last I looked, the hippies and Sam were still hanging out at this time, sort of off the side of the store, near where I first saw them. I finished up with the car and turned around to head back to the storefront. No hippies anywhere in sight. Nowhere, just gone. Perhaps they hitched a ride while I was turned around, but it was only a minute. When I walked out to the streets, I could see quite a ways in both directions. They were nowhere to be seen. This is the last I saw of the two hippie kids. I hope they're okay. Sam was still there, but it was getting late. I wanted to help. I decided to call the local police, who gave me the phone number of the animal shelter. I called over there, and the way that it was handled seemed very odd at the time, and still does. But I wanted to help, so I went along with it. Sam was a good boy after all. The person I spoke with at Animal Control looked up Sam's info based on the dog tag number. This person, instead of saying, "Hold on, we'll send out an officer," or even just call the owner, instead they gave me Sam's owner's phone number and told me to call. I called the number and an older man politely answered the phone. I explained I had Sam. I gave him water and he's just hanging out with me here. But the gas station is closing soon, so it would be best for you to come pick up Sam. He seemed perplexed and asked me to describe Sam to him. I did. Sam looked like a mutt lab mix, darkish brown coat, medium to large sized dog, very friendly disposition. Just a regular old good boy. What the man said next has been rattling around my brain for the last 24 years. The man said, "We had a dog named Sam, but he passed away a good 10 years ago." I was dumbfounded, and all I could do was describe Sam again. So the man said, "Yeah, that sounds like Sam, but no way it could be. It just can't be." He was polite, and we talked back and forth a bit, but with no resolution, we hung up. I was unsure about what to do next, but I quickly realised that there was nothing for me to do. Just like the hippie kids, Sam too was nowhere to be seen. He just vanished. My mum passed last October, and it truly broke my heart. She was my best friend, and losing her has been the most painful experience of my life. Something just happened that's made me cry, but in a good way. About 7 weeks ago, I started a new job, and it's in a field that I've never even considered: dental nursing. The opportunity kind of just fell into my lap, and so I took it. I've been thinking about my mum a lot recently, as I previously worked in education, and so it makes me sad that I can't tell her all about my new career path and get her advice and wisdom if I've had a hard day. I know she would have loved to hear about my work, and I know she would have been so proud of me. Anyway, I was going through some of my mum's jewellery the other day and put some pieces in a little box to go through later and decide what I wanted to keep. I put the box in my dressing gown pocket about a week ago and just kept forgetting to put it elsewhere. I just now decided to look through it finally, and I found this gorgeous mystic topaz necklace, which made me smile because it was her favourite. I wanted something of hers to wear all the time, and so thought that was the perfect thing, as I can't wear rings or bracelets at work. Mine and my mum's song was "Sit Down" by James, and I always used to say that when she died, if she wanted to tell me something, to play that song somehow. I had my headphones in and my music on shuffle. I was admiring the necklace and wondering if I should put it on, and just as I opened the clasp to put it on, that song came on. I have literally thousands of songs on my phone, so the fact that one came on at that time is just weird. It's the first time I've heard that song since her passing too. I have a feeling that I'm meant to wear this necklace for some reason or another. For background, I'm 16 years old. will be relevant later. And I grew up in the part of California where Richard Ramirez committed his crimes. It was so close to home, in fact, that my great-grandmother met him at the men's prison she worked at. My hometown has been associated with bad luck and crime since I could remember, so this experience is especially peculiar. In my childhood home, we had 2 bathrooms. One in the front of the house, which wasn't facing any outer walls of the house, and one in the back of the house, which had a big window above the toilet, which was connected to our backyard. Neighbours couldn't peek or anything. We lived in this house from when I was a newborn to when I was 4 years old. I lived in this house with my nana and my mom, and I dreaded using the bathroom in the back. I have extremely detailed memories of seeing a man with a taximan cap watch me wash my hands, or even watch me enter the bathroom. I would always tell my nana and my mother about it, saying, "Nana, Mom, the boogeyman is going to get me," as I ran out of the bathroom. They just figured I was being a little kid and imagining stuff. We moved out of that house a year after my nana passed away, and I pretty much forgot about the taximan cap guy. My memories of this man came back to me last year when we discussed body snatching in my forensic class. My teacher used Ed Gein as an example, and everything fell into place. As soon as I saw the image of him, memories from my childhood came back. The terror I felt seeing him watch me bathe or use the toilet flooded my memory. I have OCD, and OCD makes you think some pretty crazy and nonsensical shit. So I figured, hey, it might not be anything at all. Maybe I'm making it up in my head. Basically gaslighting myself, even though I clearly remember what I saw as a child. Most likely because I didn't believe that something that weird would happen to me. However, it's now fully sunk in that what happened was real, and I'm not being crazy. About half an hour ago, my mom was talking to me about how my nana was paranoid of Richard Ramirez when she was younger, and the subject of serial killers came up somehow. And this being a light-hearted conversation already, I mentioned Gein, and I told my mom, now pretty much 13 years later, how this man scared the daylights out of me as a kid. Even though I wasn't aware of Gein's existence at that age, and the fact that I, or my mom, or my nana for that matter, were even alive when he was committing his crimes. She immediately knew what I was talking about when I mentioned a taxi-man cap boogeyman, and all of my suspicions were gone. She even said that I would draw him sometimes with the name Teddy next to him, which I have no memory of. Even weirder is that his death date is the 20 days off of my birthday, and I have a birthmark right on my chest where my lung is located, and Gein died from respiratory failure. The fact that my mom remembers and I remember proves that this definitely did happen and I wasn't having false memories. I don't know if I was haunted by Ed Gein as a child, or that I somehow am a reincarnation of him. That's what my friends are saying anyway. But regardless, it's bizarre and strange. I believe in the paranormal and ghosts and all that, but I would never expect something like this to happen to me. When I was in 4th to 8th grade, we moved into a century-old farmhouse in Strawtown, Indiana. My father was in and out of the picture at this point in my life, so most of the time it was only me, my mother, and 2 younger brothers living there. One was only a year younger than I, and the youngest was 0 to 4 during this time. The house always felt as though someone was watching you or breathing down your neck. I'm just going to list the things that occurred for brevity. 1. Mom started seeing black shadows around the house. She said she could smell him. Body odor would be smelled in a specific spot and not directly next to it. As time went on, she started seeing the imprint of someone sitting on the edge of her bed. Then one night, it lay across her legs and she woke up thrashing to get it off. 2. I had the upstairs bedroom connected to the attic door through a small closet. These were huge rooms. Things were the least crazy for me. I would hear footsteps run up and down the stairs at night, and my brothers would be in bed. The scariest that would happen to me was that often the door to the attic would swing open, as though someone forced against the wall, and a cold presence would rush to my bedside. When I was 14, I started into a spiraling depression. I painted my walls blood red and began writing poetry and things on my walls in aggressive handwriting. Never have felt and acted that way since. I have, however, had many instances of paranormal activity follow me throughout my life. My Irish twin brother had it bad. I only know fragments of this story, as what happened to him is something he'd rather forget. One night, he screamed in his room. We checked on him and he had been smacked. Thought it was him hitting himself in his sleep, but the handprint was upside down. Impossible to do to yourself. 15 years later, my mom told me she found him crying on the stairs one night. He was reluctant to tell her why, but when pressed, he told her he kept hearing voices, telling him to kill all of us. My mom understandably kept this from us. When I asked him about it, he was visibly upset and said it stopped as soon as we moved from that house. Youngest brother, 2 to 3 when he started saying weird stuff. He would see Boots walking around the house with nobody attached. He'd also hear laughing when he'd get near the basement steps. I remember the 4 of us kneeling and praying that this entity would leave us alone. It didn't. We decided to leave after a morning when my mom and youngest brother were home alone. They were taking a nap when the bed and dresser started violently shaking. No earthquakes. They shook by themselves and what mom said was intimidation. We moved out. Was told by a neighbour that everyone else that has moved in afterward moved out within a few months. It's empty now. I still drive by it and want to go confront whatever is there and get answers. The landlord is an old farmer that doesn't believe in it. This has been the first time I've posted my story online. I've worked at a nursing home for the last 12 years, going on 13 this year. I work nights pretty much exclusively, and I'm very used to this place being in a much more liminal state than day shift sees. Empty halls, dim lights, far fewer people. It's not scary, it's strangely comfortable. That being said, a lot of people who have worked this shift with me claim we're haunted by at least a few different people who used to live or work here. I've personally only witnessed a few things, and none of them felt really malicious and have other explanations, so I just roll with it and move on. Here's a few things they've told me about, or that I've seen. A woman in a brown skirt and jacket sometimes is seen by the CNAs walking the halls. If she goes into a room, we need to keep an eye on the resident because they're likely going to have health issues in the next 24 hours. More than one nurse has told me this is the case. I've never seen the woman, but they swear she's here and she's the ghost of a former RN who's still doing rounds. One of the units has a friendly little girl apparition, apparently. Granted, a lot of our residents have dementia and tend to tell us things that aren't there all the time. Bugs, dogs, that kind of thing. But there's been very consistent reports of residents seeing this cute and sweet girl and talking to her, only to die the next day, despite not really having any conditions that would tank suddenly like that. But it only happens on this one unit, and no other ones in the building. Staff that work there regularly will always find an excuse to have a doctor see residents who start saying they've seen a little girl, even if they don't have any external signs of distress or anything. Cold spots. People complain about these frequently, and sometimes it's just the roof fans blowing cool air into a hallway. At least once, though, it was definitely a little more sinister. For a month or so after an ornery resident passed a few years back, anytime someone went into the room they died in, they'd complain how cold it was. It was always a few degrees colder in there than the rest of the hall, even with the window shut. Maintenance couldn't find a good reason for it, and it eventually just stopped on its own. But people hated going in there and said it felt like someone was watching and staring daggers into you. Charts falling down. When we still used paper charts, more than once they'd have been completely settled on a shelf 1 second, and the next, a bunch would just fall to the floor. I saw that one a few times over the years, ranging from one chart to a solid dozen. No one could find a reason for that one either. Everything was stable and the shelves were level. The charts would just dump onto the floor. Electric nonsense. Okay, this one is my baby. I love this entity or entities if they're a thing, and they're about the only ones I'll actively say or hear when people ask. Everything electrical or electronic in this building acts strangely. It's not bad strange, nothing life-threatening or anything, but core lights will go on and off on their own. Room lights and fans do the same. Sometimes the computers aren't right either, and the phone spent a week flickering in and out of static at one point. If it were just stuff that was plugged in, I would say it's just a messed up wiring situation, and that probably does play a part. But there's also several cases of battery-powered electronics doing this sort of thing. When we still had chair and bed alarms for people prone to dangerous self-transfers, they would go off when there was no one on them at all, or when people were completely still on them and asleep. The second you investigate by looking into the room, they'd stop. I'd liken this one to a bunch of playful kids, and I found that when you're polite and ask, things sort almost immediately after. Weird stuff. I have my own fair share of scary experiences. Mostly paranormal, such as seeing a red eye poke out in the tall grass. Santa toy fell and turned on, but it doesn't have batteries. And witnessed 2 possessions. One in my classroom and during our field trip, but the one that I'll never forget lasted about a week. It was early November in 2009, and we've just finished celebrating All Souls Day, / the Day of the Dead, here in the Philippines. We lived in a small subdivision surrounded by kind neighbours, so we didn't really expect things to turn south so fast. It's just me, my brother, my mum and dad, grandfather and cousin, who've been living in the house for about 6 months, and so far, so good. My mum's store is doing great. First time being able to watch Cartoon Network and Nickelodeon, and I've just started my Pokemon Fire Red walkthrough. Then it happened. My cousin told us about the voices she hears at night, and the constant banging she feels underneath her bed. We shrugged it off as some nightmare, and days passed until she brought it up again. But this time, she woke up near the stairs at 3 a.m, and that actually made my parents a little worried. I was a kid, so I wasn't actually scared. To be honest, I'm actually pretty pumped to experience my first actual paranormal activity. My brother, on the other hand, was quiet for some reason. What my cousin told us the next day actually sent shivers down my spine. She was taking a bath, and when she poured water on her back, it parted ways like someone or something was on her back. Initially, it wasn't that scary, but I was reminded of Shutter, and boy, that scared me to death when we watched it, the scene on the ladder. It was then that my brother admitted that he can see spirits, actually shadow and light figures, that my dad actually experienced participating in an exorcism when he was still young. The events that proceeded to unfold are just horrifying thinking about it, now that I'm older. We had our first exorcism, and it wasn't what I expected it to be. She was just lying on the bed and saying weird stuff. I actually hoped that she'd levitate or rotate her head. She was able to rip a page from the Bible before becoming stable. My brother heard voices of different genders and ages. What's worse is that she had to sleep in our room since hers is cursed or something. She slept below the side where I usually sleep in, and at that moment, I've never wanted to sleep as fast as my entire life. The thought of opening your eyes and she's floating above you or staring at you directly in your face, ugh. The next day was kind of tame. My cousin was doing fine, and my grandpa just happened to see a lady in a black veil coming down from the stairs into the kitchen, which was just an extension of the house. I was outside that time as well, as my parents and brother, so not the type of news we'd want to hear. The next day was the grand finale, good versus evil, as I watched everything unfold while eating a bowl of pancit Canton noodles. It was the worst she's ever been physically, and it looked terrifying. She started doing incantations, to which my dumb 10-year-old brain responded with more made-up incantations. I didn't take it seriously at all. They decided to cleanse her room, which was even harder to do because of her brother participating in the cleanse and eventually getting possessed too. He looked at one of the images of my grandmother, to which he described the eyes turning black, and that's when he lost control. He was freaking strong, but able to take on my dad and priest's assistant. Eventually, she threw up a black necklace and decided to kill it on the dance floor, as witnessed by my kid brain. She looked into a mirror, and just like that, it was over. They took care of the mirror, and she was brought into church rehab. We didn't realise how many spectators we had outside of our house. We discovered that the owner of the house performed a ritual after the extension, so yeah, we had to move out. I'm glad it's just the house that's haunted. She's doing fine now, and so are we. According to some of our ex-neighbours, they still see figures inside her room when they walk past it. It was about 2 years ago. I moved into a new house away from town, about 30 minutes. We lived on a roundabout. We have only one neighbour. He's a cool guy. My room is on the second floor, and I have another room with a door just behind my bed, a bit to the side. So, my room was in between two other rooms, but it's the guest room, so there's no one. I have dark blue blackout curtains. I sleep without any light. I like it more this way. Also, there's a mirror by my left side on the wall, so if I look at it, I see the top of the curtains and the top of the window. It's an important detail for later. I usually wake up a couple times during the night to drink water or just, I don't know, wake up for no reason. So I just go back to bed. But this time, I open my eyes, sleepy and in almost complete darkness. And there's light from God knows where. My curtains are shut and all the doors are closed as well. There was a person standing there by my closed door. He was tall, like at least 2 meters tall. He was from the bottom to the top of my ceiling. He was dressed in all black, but I could see his clothes. He was like 19th century style. He also had a big cane and a top hat. I could move my head and look at him. Just the fact that I can move scared me, because I know when it's sleep paralysis, when you can't move. But I did move. I look at him, not with fear, but with confusion, like, what the fuck? How is that? But not scared like I know he won't do anything. I pinch myself to make sure I'm not sleeping. It did hurt, so I know for sure I wasn't sleeping. Then I look in my mirror, and I can see the man standing by my bed, just behind me. I could see his reflection in my mirror looking down at me. He was standing a few centimeters away from me, and just standing there looking at me. Then I could feel the terror running through me. I couldn't move. I was shocked in fear. I could feel him behind me. After a few seconds, that seemed an eternity. I turned my head to look at him, and he was gone. I couldn't see him anywhere. It's like he just vanished. So this was 2 years ago. Now, a week ago, me and my friend, female, we went on a walk. It was already dark outside. I told her the whole story. She was scared a bit, but nothing serious. Then I told her about the other stories, and we went back home and slept. During the night, I woke up to the sound of windows opening, but we were home alone. She had a dog, so I thought it was just the dog. So, I went back to sleep. I wake up again, but this time I hear tapping. Like a metal tapping on the second floor. And I see him again. Then I had just one thought. David, I don't know why I thought of a name. Did I give a name to a demon by accident? Is it bad? I rubbed my eyes and he was gone. Again, like the last time. I went to investigate and there was nothing. I told her a story in the morning, but she didn't believe me and thought I was just making fun of her. But it did happen. These two happened on the same night. Everybody was asleep and I was talking on the phone with a friend. But when I hung up and took my headphones off, I immediately heard a man's voice, clear as day, say my name. I froze and didn't know what to do, so I just called my friend back. It couldn't have been anybody because I was in the sunroom and the only man in the house would have to get out of bed and get his walker to come to me, and I'd see him. I'm pretty sure this happened the same night, but it was dark in the house. And I think there was always some sort of light from the kitchen. But I was looking into the kitchen and all of a sudden a little blue figure that kind of glowed ran across the door frame, but I might have imagined that. This one is what really freaked me out. This time, I was sleeping in a room and had this dream. I was running in a forest, but it was like a hiking path, and I felt scared, but I didn't know what I was running from. I saw these signs that would digitally change numbers, and above the numbers were pictures that looked like huge walls. I eventually realized that whatever number was shown was how many of those creatures were chasing after me. I made it to a white abandoned building, and through a dirty window, I saw my mom's truck. I decided to go for it and try to escape, but all of a sudden, one of the creatures pinned me down, and I looked up behind me, and another was walking up to me, smiling and telling me, "You can't hide," and scratched my leg. That's when I woke up and looked at my leg to find that same spot bleeding. My grandma tells me that there's odd things happening in that house, especially her clothes stretching somehow and things missing a lot. Something really odd that she tells me will happen is her makeup will be empty when she's only used it a few times and knew it shouldn't be empty. I only go there once or twice a month for about an hour, since I live further away now though. At the time, I lived in a 2-story house. 10 was the age I started being left home alone for a few hours, since I'd get home from school before my parents got home from work. It was a normal day for me. I got home and was in the living room. The TV was on and I was doing homework. Everything was fine until I heard a loud slam of a door from my parents' room. Their room was upstairs and to the left, above our kitchen. How our living room was set up, I was near their room. I knew their bedroom door was open, but the sound definitely wasn't their bedroom door closing, but their closet door, since it was muffled and still loud enough for me to hear. So I muted the TV and listened. Maybe I was hearing things, since this house did freak me out when home alone, to the point where I'd not go upstairs until someone came home. Not long after I muted the TV, I started hearing heavy footsteps, as if someone was walking slowly around the upstairs with heavy boots on. I could hear these steps walk out of my parents' room and down the hallway to the stairs. My heart was racing already. Someone was in my house. When they got to the stairs and started walking down them, I could also now hear a metal clinking sound, like keys rattling or charms on a bracelet shaking. I sighed with relief because I thought it was my dog's collar making the clicking sounds. So maybe my dog was the one creating these eerie footsteps. So I called my dog and he came, but not from upstairs. He came from the other room in our downstairs area. Now, I knew I wasn't imagining these steps or clicking sounds because they were still going, painstakingly slowing down my stairs. Not only that, but my dog was also staring in the direction of them with his ears perked up. He heard them too, and I didn't know what to do. So I kept listening. The steps finally made it to the bottom of the stairs, transitioning from carpet to tile. Of course, where I was sitting, I couldn't see my stairs, so I couldn't even see who this person was. So I waited some more before attempting to make any moves. The footsteps slowly walked in the room my dog was in before I called him, a room I couldn't see. At this point, I'm in tears with my heart racing. My dog is following the sounds with his head, moving with them as he stays with me on the couch. A reminder, these were indeed real sounds I was hearing. The steps and metal clinking sounds made their way to the kitchen. When I was on the couch, I could see only a quarter of my kitchen. I could see the stove and half of the sink, and that was it. The sounds stopped completely right in the kitchen, right where I wouldn't be able to see a person. It was dead silent now. I waited a tiny bit longer to see if whoever was in my house was going to jump out and scare me, or finally reveal themselves, but nothing ever happened. I finally got up, running to the downstairs bathroom that was opposite of the kitchen, and forced my dog in there with me. I locked the door and called my dad crying, trying to tell him someone was in the house and if he's almost home. He said it was still an hour away from home, but reassured me no one was in the house. I tried explaining what I just heard, but he didn't believe me, most likely because if it really was someone who broke in, he probably would have done something to me already. Nonetheless, he told me to relax and that no one was in the house. We lived in a nice neighborhood away from the main areas of our town. Our neighbors would have let us know if they saw anything suspicious, etc., and that our dog would protect me since he was a large dog who was indeed very protective of me. Then he had to hang up so he wouldn't risk getting pulled over. It took me a few more minutes before I finally let myself and my dog out of the bathroom. There were no more sounds at all. No additional steps approaching the bathroom door. No jiggling the handle. Nothing. It was perplexing and scary for a 10-year-old me, and to this day I have no clue what my dog and I heard. It never happened again, and I ended up going back to watching TV and waiting for my dad to get home. When he did get home, it was proven to me that there was no one in the house. Nothing was disturbed, but my parents' closet door was in fact closed, which they always left open. That was the only proof I had, but still I cannot explain what made those sounds. I checked into this hotel room with my family Friday night. It's now very, very early on Saturday. A dream I had woke me up, and since I can't go back to sleep, I'm posting here. I'll start off by saying I'm generally not plagued by nightmares, and I definitely don't have auditory hallucinations. Last night, as well as tonight, laying down to go to sleep, I've been hearing whispers. I was just tired, but now I think it's something more. Yesterday, my mum said I was crying out in my sleep. First night we stayed here. I was having nightmares that night. About half an hour ago, I woke up sobbing, soaked in my own tears. I had just witnessed my daughter's death and attended her funeral in extreme detail. For reference, I do have a daughter. She's 1.5, and asleep, alive thank goodness, next to me. In my dream, she was murdered by a bomb of some sort that hurt others, but she was first impact. And if that wasn't heartbreaking enough, at a funeral, she was walking around like normal. The funeral itself was weird, and there weren't many people. And I know for a fact that a lot would come to my daughter's. She was holding someone's hand, but when she noticed me, she smiled and ran over. I picked her up and smelled the top of her head, as I often do in real life, and was heartbroken to realize she now smelled like embalming fluid. So I took a picture with her to capture one last memory. When I looked at it, I realized I was sitting alone. All that combined really solidified that she was really gone. It's hard to describe the feelings of hopelessness and despair and gut-wrenching, profound sadness that are still lingering. I texted my friend about it, and she definitely believes it's haunted. That thought hadn't even crossed my mind until she mentioned it. So I'm an atheist. I don't believe in God or anything supernatural that includes ghosts or curses. To begin with, yesterday I watched Doctor Strange late at night while coming back from the theatre. Out in the open, in the dark, I saw 20 books on the ground. I looked and saw no one, so I took it. And I went home and slept. Around 3 a.m. in my deep sleep, I was having a dream. And then in the dream, I started feeling a sharp pain inside me, near my heart and liver. I was feeling it for real. And in the dream, I saw a girl I don't recognize the face. And you know how dreams work, and I was in agony, and then the girl says, "Find." And then I wake up for real, and I was feeling the pain near my liver area. And then after a few seconds, the pain was gone. And then I looked up and saw someone standing there, just watching me right in front of me, like 2 or 3 meters away. It was dark. All I could see was a white figure just standing there watching. So to give context, I live with my father, and I thought it's him maybe. He heard me screaming in my dream. So I called out "Dad" a couple of times. No response. Whatever it was, it's just standing there, quiet, watching me, occasionally moving its shoulders. I didn't know what to do, and I was staring at it in dark for 20 or 30 seconds. So now I started freaking out and started searching for my phone, and I grabbed it and turned towards the figure, and the phone fell right out of my hand as if someone pulled it. Phone might have been plugged into the charger, but I don't know. And then found it again, and then turned on the flash and pointed it in the direction, and no one was there. So I thought my brain must have imagined a human silhouette in the dark. So I turned off the flash to check if it's just the dark, and now I couldn't even see the silhouette anymore, and don't even feel anyone's presence in my room, other than me. Now I'm really scared and all confused, and I felt I was holding something in my hand other than my phone. It felt like paper, and there it was. The 20 books I found yesterday, right in my hand. I don't remember grabbing anything other than my phone. It's been 7 or 8 hours, and I couldn't quite make out what I saw. The dream and the girl from the dream said "find." What does that even mean? The pain I felt. I'm not superstitious, but I feel it has something to do with a $20 bill. Or it's just me connecting superstitious dots for something that has logic. So my Uncle Gregory died before I was born, in 1986, and some weird shit keeps happening to my mom. The song Your Wildest Dreams by the Moody Blues will play on the radio, and it only seems to happen on her birthday, her brother's birthday, my Uncle Gregory, and my grandmother's birthday. She passed 2001. Christmas, Easter, and Mother's Day, and it's been happening every time without fail since he died. Today she was at Home Depot, and she sent me the song playing to her on the radio in Home Depot. It's so bizarre because I've been with her a few times when this has happened and witnessed it myself. It's not even that popular of a song, but for some reason, it happens on a special day related to her or her relatives. She doesn't remember the song having any special meaning to my uncle or her, but has noticed it every year on these days, playing on the radio that's random, not Spotify or Pandora. Does anyone else have a song like that on a birthday or holiday, or a deceased relative's birthday or special day? The lyrics of the song are kind of creepy given the context of this happening. This is from early 2000. Can't recall the exact year. I would be about 13 or 14 then. My family, more like my father, was invited to a place for a function that's 150 kilometers off from Varanasi, India. This was going to Akhand Ramcharitmansas recitation. For those who don't know, Ramcharitmansas is a religious book in Hinduism, and it's considered very sacred. The book, in general, is quite big, and it takes some time to finish it, and generally anyone who sets it up treats it like a function. It was an idyllic village with not a lot of houses, and was near hills, Vindhya range. So we hired a car and went there. The aim was to stay for one and come back when the function starts there by the next morning. So the day we reached, instantly our car broke. Pretty weird to start with. After getting fresh, I was sitting in an open field with some houses near it. All of us were shocked when I saw a kid falling from a terrace. Thankfully, it was just a story tall, and while he did get hurt, thankfully it wasn't severe. He claimed someone pushed him, and from what I saw, there was no one there when he fell. Anyways, he was taken to a hospital in a nearby town. I started becoming skeptical about the place. So in villages, a lot of people like sleeping in the open, especially on warm nights. So our beds were made in the open. That night was the night I will never forget. And that night, I was batshit scared. I felt I was being watched and someone was moving around me. Similar stuff reported by my sisters. The next day, I argued with my father that we have to leave today. But as the car was still broken, we couldn't. Another night, the same shit. I wasn't able to sleep the whole night, but was afraid to even open my eyes. I almost peed on my bed. It was so scary. There was this unknown fear which is very difficult to describe in words. On day 3, Ramcharitmanas started. Unfortunately, the car was still not fixed, and we had to wait another day. However, after Ramcharitmanas started, that night was the night I was able to sleep without any fear and had a sound sleep. The next morning, our car got fixed and we left in the afternoon. But to date, whenever I think of those 2 days, it still sends shivers down my spine. This happened to me about 4 years ago. I haven't felt comfortable sharing this before because in the end, I'm not really sure what happened. And I'm not really sure it counts as anything. But I think about it often, and I think it would be good if someone else heard it. I had just moved back home with my parents in Mexico, from the US. I was going through some harsh moments, and I needed to be with my family. The town where I moved back to can barely be considered a town. I think of it as more of a larger village. It's located between 2 big rivers and surrounded by thick forest. The main source of income is agriculture and farming, and homes there are usually attached with big pieces of land to cultivate. There's one main road that passes through that, connects several more of these villages. This road is made up of cliffs and sharp curves, There's no straight stretch of road for at least 20 miles from my town. We don't have a lot of through traffic. It's a small, lonely, but beautiful town. One day, my parents needed to make their way to a bigger town close to us, about 45 minutes, to purchase some supplies. I decided to stay behind and take care of my little sister, since she didn't want to go. She was inside watching TV in the living room, and I made my way out to the driveway to attempt to make a phone call. This driveway had a tall, windowless metal gate and was surrounded by tall concrete walls, about 9 feet tall. In fact, concrete walls surrounded all of our house, the front patio, the backyard, and the driveway. The house was well secured inside these walls, but it was also impossible to see the street or anything beyond those walls for that matter. I gave up on this call since it was losing battle trying to get any reception there, and sat inside one of my dad's cars watching a show I had downloaded before leaving the US. About 20 minutes went by before I heard something. Something like a growl. I paused my phone to hear better, but I wasn't able to hear whatever sound that was again, so I dismissed it. About 40 minutes passed before I heard it again, and I realized it was definitely a growl. A loud growl. I paused my phone, got out of the car, and got closer to the main gate where I believed the sound was coming from. And suddenly it howled. Now, I've lived in this town for many years before. I'm very familiar with sounds from coyotes and dogs, but this was different. The sound made my skin crawl. I felt the deepness of the howl in the pit of my stomach. It sounded like this animal was the size of a bull. I froze in front of that gate. Then it howled again, this time louder. My heart was racing at this point, and the desire to open that door and look at its beast outside was immeasurable. The one thing that was stopping me was the reminder that my sister was inside the house. Remembering my sister, I ran inside and checked on her. The TV was blaring and she was oblivious to any sound coming from outside. I ran back outside and got close to the gate again. I laid flat on the ground and attempted to see under the gate for paws or hooves or something, but saw nothing. A minute passed in silence and then it howled again, but this time I heard it behind the house. I felt my opportunity to see this creature fading, and while I weighed my options, the howl came again. This time it sounded a mile away. That was the last time I heard it. I remained outside for the next hour or so, panicked and, quite frankly, a little weirded out. I was too afraid to go outside, but I really wanted to know if it was still out there, and if anyone else driving nearby saw it. Finally, my parents arrived back home. As soon as they were out of the car, I asked my mother if she had seen anything, or maybe heard of someone who saw anything weird. She said no, but asked why. Now this is where the weird part begins. I told her everything, what I heard, what it sounded like, and where I heard it. I might have expected her to mock me, laughing at me, or simply dismiss me. However, I wasn't ready for what happened next. Her face became serious. She asked some questions about it, like at what time it happened, if I had seen it, and if my sister heard it too. Then, she forbade me to go outside unaccompanied. She explained that evil was most likely lurking around me because of my sadness. She made sure all the doors were locked, and she and my dad went out to secure the property with the rifle in hand. I was speechless. I guess at that time I could have asked my mom to explain what was happening, to have her explain to me where this fear was coming from. But I think a part of me was terrified and even slightly embarrassed that my own mother could believe there was something evil out there. Over the course of the next few days, I wasn't allowed to go out alone. However, the interesting part is that people started reporting sightings of this beast. One had seen it in his property. He claimed the beast was the size of a bear, and he ran from there before it spotted him. Our closest neighbour said he saw it when he was driving near our property at night. He said this beast was furry and grey and the size of a bull. Another day, my mother was told that cattle were missing from a farm nearby. It was blamed, of course, on the beast. That afternoon, my father came back saying that a hunt party was forming within the next couple of days to kill it. However, the next morning, the beast was spotted in the next town over, and a few days later, seen a few towns over, little by little making its way further away from us. Every day we heard less about it until finally we heard of it no more. It was a few weeks later that my mother felt comfortable with me going out alone, not without her reminding me to be careful every time. I left Mexico a couple of weeks after that. So back in 2018, I was admitted into hospital with stage 3 bowel and liver failure. I won't dive into details, but I've currently been through 8 surgeries, have a colostomy and a venting gastric tube, and on 7 days a week, parenteral nutrition. Any who has any inclination of the medical field should understand I'm really not well medically, and these aren't my only issues. Though it's mostly physical and I don't really have any mental health concerns, except maybe depression, but not diagnosed. Anyways, my duration in this hospital was 2 years, and during a stay that long, you see some people over and over again. That's to be expected, right? Well, whenever I was having a particular bad day or was being transferred around the hospital, every few months I'd see a figure, always outside through a window, that was always dressed in a dark blue non-zip-up hoodie and basic jeans. Nothing else much about him. White shoes and a rather scrawny but tall body. Well, so far this is normal, until every time I saw him, they or I shall refer to it as him, always had their hood up. No, I don't have perfect eyesight, but I'm not blind either. And every time I tried to see his face, it just felt like a fog of black covered it. I could see like an outline, but at the same time, it felt like he had no face either. No matter how bright or dark, the face stayed the same. I put this up to the trick of the light or my mind, but even if he stood next to a bright floor light beaming up, which he always seemed to be near some kind of light, it never lit his face up. At first, I thought maybe he was a burns patient and had his face well covered because the department next to the IFU was the burns ward. Horrible place to pass, by the way. The smells, sounds, etc. always gave me the creeps, poor people. Anyways, I shook this off as a coincidence and carried on with my life. Soon after leaving the hospital and getting back home, I never saw him again until a year later, on a bad health day. I was smoking out my window. Yes, I know, not exactly great. Anyways, my home looks over the sea, but before that is a tourist parking lot. It has very bright spotlights and it's pretty spacious. It's fun watching people at times. So when I was smoking out the window, dealing with cramps, I looked up from my cigarette and saw a figure in exact same clothes, with the same eerie space. Honestly, couldn't believe my eyes. So I wiped my eyes and looked again, and yes, he was still there, but now looking up directly in my direction. This freaked me out because my area is semi-rough. So I grabbed my phone to take a picture, but when I looked again, he was gone now. There's not many places to hide apart from cars, but the parking lot was pretty empty, and he would have had to be fast to exit without me seeing. I shook my head and went to bed. Over a couple more years, I saw him about 5 or 6 more times, and just put it up to someone who had a similar wardrobe, and was maybe looking at the house next door who had drug dealers. But the face always gave me a weird feeling of needing to run, like fight or flight. The spotlingometer, where he looked, always never shine on his face. Just an empty but gorge void, like face outline anyways. Come last night, it had been a year and a couple of months, so I'd completely forgotten about it. Frankly, I'm a skeptical person and have better things to think about, like my upcoming bowel transplant, etc. Again, was having my nightlife smoke when he was there, but I could tell from the start he was looking directly at me. Felt like my soul was being stared at. I could see the faint movement of what looked like lips or just a hole, utter words, but I couldn't figure it out. To me, it looked like he was saying good luck or I hope it goes well, along these lines. My brother's girlfriend's brother is deaf, so we learnt how to lip read and do ASL, so this definitely helped in a sense. Anyways, God, I use that word a lot, but I went to grab my phone and he was gone. Now it's finally settled how weird this is. Same clothes features, always when I'm coming up to a medical event or feeling unwell, gone as soon as I try to get something, and always looking at me. Now, I could put this up to my mind's tricks. I won't deny I'm an opiate-dependent person, morphine to be exact, though it doesn't give me weird head effects, because I've been using it since 2018 medically, but still could have effect. It could be waking dreams, though I swear I'm always awake. I can tell when I have nightmares or sleep paralysis because I've had it my whole life.